Well, the Museum of Japanese Art in Genoa is formed by the collections gathered by Mr. Edoardo Chiossone, who was hired. So he amassed a very impressive collection of Japanese and Chinese art. And as I was telling you before, we also have some Korean art, which is on the permanent exhibition. So as you know, Korean art, and especially Korean Buddhist art of Shinla period, was very important for spreading Buddhism and Buddhist iconography and images to Japan. So it's also interesting that all of our collection has been gathered in Japan, so the Chinese and Korean art that we have is coming from Japan. So this is an interesting circumstance, historically speaking. Yeah. Probably because Italy is such a very rich country in culture and has a remarkable tradition. So let's say that it has not been easy to arouse interest, especially because the museum has been out of view for many years. So I had to struggle quite a lot to impose the image of the museum. And so that is a very important starting point. Also because Italian people are very sensitive to the representation of the divinities. We have many churches, so I think in the representation of the divine countenance, there are many common psychological and emotional traits. So the main hall of the museum is dedicated to Buddhist art, and we have a beautiful Korean sculpture in that hall. And so more or less I started from Buddhism and the representation of divinity in Buddhist art. Italian people are curious about, for instance, mudra, the hand gestures, but not only that. And then slowly I developed a discourse with my public involving the youngest generation, the children, because they are the harbingers of the future. So if myself, my interest in Asian cultures was aroused by my father when he told me about Asia. And I was very unsatisfied at school because at school they didn't tell us about the other people in the world. So I badly wanted to know about the people and the peoples and cultures of Asia. So because I have this experience of having been aroused in my mind about knowledge on the peoples and cultures of Asia, I thought myself, I have to do something about the children of this town. I have to interest them to Asian cultures, absolutely. And they are, as I was saying yesterday, they are not only very happy, but also very grateful. Well, I told you that the museum is a municipal one, and we have an office which takes care of publicity and advertisements. So there is a webmaster. We are very few people, unfortunately, because the financial regulations issued by our governments during the past 10, 12 years are so strict, so we cannot hire new people. We cannot hold public competition to get younger people work in the museums, unfortunately. So we have to do everything best with only little resources. But personally, I think that in our dimension, the best way is to have people do the publicity for you. You know what I mean? If people come and they are happy, not only they will be fidelized, they will come back again and again, many times during 1 year, at every new, in fact, we have many faithful customers. I call them customers, I should call them visitors, but they are very faithful. They are always there. When there is a concert, when there is a lecture, when there is a gallery talk. I also give a lot of gallery talks, of course. Another important part is making exhibitions by using the collections. I mean, the collections shouldn't be closed up into the storage. They have to be brought out. We have to give accounts about our activity concerning restoration, concerning studying and researching about the collection. So studying and researching about the collection means also I study, today I study, and tomorrow I exhibit. Yeah, I hope so. Actually, I do hope so, because I am now in Japan with the Japan Foundation Research Fellowship to study about our extensive collection of bronzes. We have Chinese and Japanese bronzes collected in Japan, but I got very interested in the items of your very famous Shinan wreck. The load of that ship, which started from China and sank in Korean waters in Shinan, and it was heading to Hakata, to Japan. So all of the load was meant to be sold in Japan. So this is another very important point historically, the mediation between China and Japan and the function of this country in this exchange. A very central, very important function. In many ways, I'm aware of that. Although I'm not an expert of Korean art, still, I think one thing that I appreciate very much is the very peculiar, very elegant standard of your porcelain. You have incredible celadon. You have incredible bronze. And also your painting, your portrait painting is so subtle and so psychologically deep and interesting. So I saw many portraits of literati and kings in your museum and also in the Palace Museum. So, but anyway, going back to the bronze, the other day, Curator Lee and your colleague here took me to visit the Shinan wreck rooms. So I enjoyed that very much. I went back myself to see the things there. And of course there are similarities between your bronzes and our bronzes. Because we have those bronzes that were brought to Japan during the Kamakura period. So around the same time as the Shinan wreck, 1323, you know. So for me, it would be wonderful if I could come here and study about that. Not only here, but also in Mokpo. I would be most grateful. And another point, because our lacquer, beautiful lacquer, Korean lacquer, is not in very good condition, but I don't know exactly what to do to preserve it, you know. So I wonder whether there are special programs to help museums abroad restore Korean items and so on. I wonder whether this kind of cooperation can be established.